Welcome back to the history of English literature. We are looking at the origin of English drama with the predecessors of English drama, like we have seen the mystery plays, miracle plays, morality plays, and how the 15th century was happened, what are the things happened in 15th century, and which led to the new kind of plays called interludes. Also, we have seen how the new kind of romantic drama evolved with the mixture of classical tradition with the new taste of Elizabethan audience. How the golden period slowly, gradually evolved with the romantic drama that we have seen in the last video with the introduction of the first English tragedy, the Corboduc or Ferrex and Porrex. At this point, it is also important to it becomes important to take a closer look at what exactly the principles of classical drama were. And the principles of classical drama were loosely based on the teachings of the Aristotle and also on the Latin poet, the first century dramatist and poet Seneca. So there were three elements which would constitute the principles of classical drama. First one being the unity of subject in tone, and this essentially meant that this the fears of tragedy and the comedy being maintained entirely separate, as we noticed early videos that a tragedy should constitute only tragic elements according to the classical tradition, and the comedy should only constitute comic elements, and a mixture of both was not considered acceptable in the classical tradition of drama. And secondly, there was a little or no dramatic action in this stage. In this sense, there was a war scene or a battle going on. There would be a voice-over which would describe the scene. No kind of action was shown on the stage. So, basically, it was a set of narratives, one after the other, and no kind of action was allowed. This was understood, it was generally understood that any kind of over action on stage would take away the purity and the sanctity of the play in general. So, this when the Elizabethan came to encounter different kinds of actions and different kinds of plot structures, they also began to find this a little too boring to begin with. The third one is the unities of time, place, and action. So, entire plot and the entire theme was constructed in such a way that the unities of time, place, and action were never disturbed. In that sense, the entire story was always set on a single day. It was based in a single scene, and there was only a single storyline without any subplots or minor episodes, which meant that a kind of events which were taking place outside of this unity of time, place, and action was either just briefly mentioned by way of narratives, or it was included into the dialogue of the various characters present on the stage. So, in the sense, there was no way in which within the classical tradition was no way in which the plot could move across centuries or across different time frames. It had to stick to these three unities. But when it comes to romantic drama, we find that the drama began to challenge all these classical principles which were in place until then. So, this also encouraged a lot of free use of variety in theme and tone, and we find the Elizabethan playwrights blending in the comic and the tragic elements together. Later, we will begin to see how Shakespeare's plays, even in a tragedy, there was always some room made for the comic interlude. So, even within a comedy, there were serious moments, there were very austere things getting talked about. So this blending had taken away the monotony of the classical tradition. The employment of the action was a very significant thing in the Elizabethan drama. We find that Elizabethan drama began to employ both action and narrative, but there was always a predominance of action over narrative, and everything that happened was always represented in some form or the other in the stage, and they also ensured that the narrative which had predominated in the classical tradition had completely been replaced by proper action which was happening on the stage. This had given a freer expression to the dramatist. It also had encouraged the audience to participate in a more active way in plays which have been staged. And thirdly, with the three unities were not taken seriously at all by Elizabethan playwrights. In fact, they began to come up with storylines that would extend over months or years. The change of seasons or even the complete change of scenery could be incorporated. They also introduced subplots, minor episodes, and all that into the storyline. So it became a more exacting and a more experimental kind of drama which had begun to emerge, and due to these three there was a possibility of variety which could be introduced on stage. And it's interesting to note that some of the times when there was a change of scene in place, either it could be in order to represent a forest, a small plant could be kept on the stage. So in many ways they began to experiment, and also every single action was taken which was part of the story was incorporated into the stage practices as well. And here we find that this is the time when the romantic form of drama began to properly emerge in Elizabethan times, and this is in fact considered as an achievement of Shakespeare's predecessors. In that way, the predecessors had made a little easier for Shakespeare to begin practicing Elizabethan romantic drama without having any direct challenge from the ancient classical models. And in this context, it is useful to remember that there were a set of dramatists known as the universe duets, about whom we will be taking a look at in the upcoming videos. The university wits who were the ones who began to bring about a theatrical and practical change in the emergence of English dramatic drama. Now let us look at some of the questions. The first question: classical principles dealt with variety of tones. Option B, maintained the spheres of tragedy and comedy entirely separate. Option C, it used variety of themes in the plays. Option D, it used full of action without narratives. The answer for these questions: the classical principles dealt with the maintaining the spheres of tragedy and comedy entirely separate. The next question is: the classical principles based on option A, the teaching of Aristotle. Option B, the Senecan model. Option C, the teaching of Plato. Option D, none of the above. The correct answer is based on both Aristotle and Senecan model. So option D is the correct answer, both A and B. The third question is: romantic drama used set narratives, maintained the spheres of tragedy and comedy entirely separate, mixture of tragedy and comedy, no variety of tone and theme. Actually, romantic drama used a mix of tragedy and comedy. So option C is the correct one. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.